they're looking for interstate business. Sunshine is not.
I mean, I'm just, are we, we cut it off right before their property, and then they're trying to compete against new businesses coming in, and we're like, yeah, but not you guys. I don't know. It just kind of feels a little, you know,
Circle K within 300 feet of residential too.
they're, is it residential right there? Yeah, they're 200 feet.
So, I mean, if we're trying to encapsulate existing things, I mean, we can keep going through it.
The sign would probably be over 300 feet from residential. The property line wouldn't, but the sign probably would.
I think we should include those existing businesses.
I would say go 1,400 feet. That gets us kind of in line um, with Birch. Then we're not kind of cutting properties in half. We kind of get, it's not, it doesn't seem quite as arbitrary, I guess, if we go down to about Birch. So if we went 14, 1,400, 1,450, something like that, that'd be my recommendation.
The other option, if you do not want to set a number, is we would take the zoning map and we would color on it what is in, what is out. And if you want it arbitrary, then
Well, could you just go to Birch and just use that as a delineation point?
The problem is it doesn't go east,
Yeah, well,
and it
yeah,
doesn't really go.
it jogs west.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's, you can kind of look and see where it's at, but
One on the west side of Split Rock, it kind of gets too far south for me for signage being high or higher.
So are you comfortable with the 14 or 1450, something like that?
As an example, but it kind of splits. I don't know exactly, but Circle K's lot, and then I guess it would be, if that's how it's zoned or platted still, would be half of what is it now, Kurtz or Laverne Bumper at the time. They have that's kind of the line right there. There's kind of a line between those two areas.
Knowing that we're talking about the draft has, obviously residential not included, and also we're talking about some protections for residential too, so I think that's workable.
Are we going to run into a problem with the potential new business coming that wanted the signage? Are they going to want a big sign? And they're farther south, right? The one we've been working on for
That one would be covered in this. I think if you're talking about the one with the
empty lot.
place that, the empty lot, yeah,
That's in
that
there.
would be covered in this
Okay.
footage.
but this doesn't really help them. But the non-conforming signage thing that is next on the agenda would help them more. Because this is just more height. They're not really looking for height.
Right, but I just don't want them coming in later and saying, well, we wanted a high sign and you cut it off before us since we're dealing with it now. I'm just trying to avoid that.
Yeah, they would be included in this though too.
And did we give Patrick a number for the height? I didn't hear that.
Can you get us something that would kind of give us some information as far as where McDonald's is at currently, how that would where that would be at elevation wise with the interstate, and then what we approved last week, what their sign would be at elevation wise, just so we can, because throwing out numbers without sitting here, was kind of hard for me. But if we could say whatever we approved last week for that variance, give us a relationship with the interstate on that, and then where McDonald's is at, and some of those signs where they're at, just so we have something that we can, is that doable?
Probably defer to you. You'd take probably the elevation of 90, then you'd take the elevation of the lot. We'd add the height and calculate the difference.
So like that, I mean, if that 38 feet's right, or whatever they said last week or 2 weeks ago, if they want a 90-foot sign, you'd be 52 foot above Split Rock. If was correct.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where that's in relationship to the interstate, so, I mean, just trying to, if we want to use the interstate, I don't know where that plays in with everything, so.
Okay, does that give you enough, Patrick, to go on for now?
I think so. We will work on getting some information and see where it shakes out on the draft.
Okay, let's move on to number 11, non-conforming signage exception, page 31.
So it rewords M a little bit. It's two sentences. I kind of combined it into one. The big difference is M1, it allows an allowance for non-conforming existing off-premise freestanding signs. A lawful non-conforming off-premise freestanding sign shall not preclude the existence, maintenance, installation, or alteration of any other freestanding sign on the lot, so long as the other sign on the lot complies with all relevant requirements of our sign code. So if the other sign would be legal, then what was legal but now is not would not preclude it. If there was a billboard on a lot where they wanted to construct a freestanding sign, the billboard would not be considered when we look at the other sign.
I don't know how this works because the two situations we're talking about are currently conforming legal signs.
The one billboard on the 1001 North Split Rock we talked about, was it 38 feet? So it's 38 feet instead of 30, as well as 240 square feet. So instead of 200, so it would be non-conforming.
Right, okay, so if we're talking height, then we've got a lot of other issues. We got an existing sign that's too tall, that means we can put up another sign that's 30 feet. So that's my concern with calling out non-conforming signs.
Because like in that example, then, if McDonald's has their non-conforming sign, then they could just say, well, that one's non-conforming, so I'm just gonna build another.
So it does specify a lawful non-conforming off-premises sign.
I thought we talked earlier, we can't dictate content.
So that aspect of it we can. There was a subsequent Supreme Court case. It was in the packet from last meeting. It's in there if you want to read the case. So the Supreme Court often reaches a result and then walks it back a little bit. At least that's my understanding of it. So the holding of the subsequent case was that the on-off-premise distinction is not a content distinction. It is a time, place, and manner distinction. Whether you agree with that, that's what they came out with as a way to distinguish. You can do on-off-premise, you just can't regulate content further than that. So I'm sure something will evolve in 2 years from now, and we'll be at it again. But that is where we are.
That gets to be so gray because if I remember right, when we were going through this originally, there was a sign at Blaine's, I think it was, that pointed down Main Street. That was also part of the same sign that Blaine's was advertising on. So what happens when you get somebody that has a portion of a sign that's advertising off premise and other portions of the sign that's advertising on premise? How do we regulate that?
And that's where the not caring part was nice, just because it all is what it is. Instead of now we have to
these signs with the rotating messages, you know, VFW fundraiser Saturday, pancake feed. If that's down at the VFW, now all of a sudden that's an off-premise sign associated with an on-premise sign, so. I guess in my mind, as I mentioned before, those two properties need to submit a variance. If we found hardship in the height of a sign last meeting, I don't know why we can't find hardship in an existing signage easement. That's basically what that is. It's an easement on the property. That sign is theirs, even though it doesn't belong to them. No different than a power line sitting on somebody's property. Or a pipe buried under somebody's property. This just happens to be a sign. It's not owned by the property owners, but it's a contractual easement that they can place that article on their property. It's not owned by the property owners. So to me, that's no different. That's basically an advertising easement, and that advertising easement is preventing them from putting up any signage on their property. If that isn't a hardship, I don't know what is. To me, that's much more distinct than the height of your property relative to an arbitrary road.
And I kind of liked the verbiage of this until Brian started talking, but it opens up a can of worms if we just say that you have a non-conforming sign, and so now you can put up another sign. I kind of tend to agree that this is why we need to have a variance that can function so that we can allow something that should be allowed without changing the ordinance broadly that opens up something that we don't want. So I guess, I don't know, I kind of thought I liked the verbiage on that, but
the second sign would be conforming. It wouldn't be two non-conforming signs.
right, but if we just have if we say that there's a non-conforming sign, so then you can have a conforming sign, then there's other places in town that have non-conforming signs, and if we just say that, well, you have your non-conforming signs, and now you get to have a conforming sign too, I could see how it could open up a can of worms that how does someone come in and this is what our ordinance says, but we say, yeah, but that's not what we meant, so we're not gonna let you do it. I think it could be kind of tricky. If we, I don't know, there's probably a way to do it.
So the path I'm hearing from two members is we will abandon work on this proposed ordinance and variance would be the proposed path. Not saying a variance would be approved or not, just because that's a matter for the public hearing, but is that your preferred approach?
Say Circle K comes in and says they want another sign and they do a variance, how are you gonna say no to that variance? It's the same thing. It's a non-conforming sign, they want another sign,
They have control over their sign though.
they have control over it. It's a lease, there's a way out of a lease. It's a lease, there's always a way out of a lease. They might have to pay something, they might have to back pay something, but there's still a way out. And that's it. But then he also said he hasn't read the lease. So that's a self-inflicted lease. It's not an easement.
I'm just going by what the two gentlemen, Mr. Tisdall and the gentleman from Van Busker, what they told us. They said they cannot get out of those leases.
So say Circle K signs a lease with somebody else, a property owner, and it's the same thing. We have no control whether they sign a lease But they can certainly come in for a variance right after that. But how are you gonna say no to them then?
I do think there's a difference there. Where that, the Van Busker, or, wasn't Van Busker, but the other guy, Tisdall, sorry. That situation, they had it was legal conforming until they rezoned, and they would have been legal non-conforming had not their previous sign been torn down, and then they rezoned, and I know that that's on them, I get that. But there's a part of that that they have limited control over, if, how much control you want to say. I do think that's a different situation than someone that just has a sign and wants to put up another sign. I think that, I do think that there's a difference there. I think there's a different hardship there. And maybe this verbiage here would be fine. I just, I don't know, I think there could be some problems with that too, so. I don't know that there's a perfect answer either way. Either way might open up a can of worms, I don't know. But I do think that there's a difference between the properties.
The other thing with a variance, we can put conditions on it that the sign comes down at a point when that lease is up.
But we don't see that lease, nor do we control that lease.
I don't, what do you want to see?
Those signs have to be able to be taken down. They're doing it right now on 10th Street. 2 of them are coming down that were just put up within the last 5 years. What is that? BP by Les Schwab one's coming down, and then another, let's just say 2 lots down, right across from Buffalo Wild Wings. There was 2 billboards there. One came down, and then now another one is coming down. I don't know if the first one's coming down because it's part of the road project, but the other one's down by the gas station on the corner of Menards there. That is, the stem, or the post is still there, but the whole billboard's gone now. So they must be able to do something to a point. I don't know what they did, or if the city of Sioux Falls stepped in, or what happened, but
Well, we need to not be discussing the variance, so, do you want to have Patrick get rid of this, work on it?
Do you want to just hold on to it, see what happens? Do we want to amend it? Do we want to scrap it?
I don't want to open up the door for multiple signs on properties. Unless, I mean, when I first got on the board, this was one of the first things that we addressed was signage. And at that time, it was the intent, okay, we got some billboards in town, we'll keep those in place. But we made it so restrictive that we didn't want to entice billboards being placed in Brandon, other than along the interstate and or in the industrial park. Unless times have changed and we now want to start to introduce billboards in Brandon, we certainly can if that's the new direction that people want to go.
I don't think that's the direction people want to go. We're just trying to make allowance for a business to have signage, even though they have a billboard, an existing billboard on their property. At least that's my feeling. So I don't know how to accomplish that.
Yeah, I'm in the same place. I'm not in favor of opening up more sign opportunities like this, especially off-premise signs, but I think what we've discussed is pointed out potential sort of loopholes that could be created by both of the solutions that were discussed tonight. So I don't want to penalize these 2 development opportunities because of a pre-existing sign. I think in both cases, they existed prior to ownership. I'm not sure about the one. I know in the other one, it definitely predated the current owner. I think in both,
The lease on 1001 was signed by the landowner that owns it now. At least that's my understanding.
Was he under the assumption that because his sign was still there before the contractor took it down, that he was going to be in compliance?
I don't know if he asked us or anything about compliance on signs or anything.
Well, I mean, during the variance hearing, you can decide if it was self-inflicted or not, I guess. But at this point, we're not on the variance hearing, so what do you want to do? Do you want to just put this on hold for the moment? There's no sense him working on this unless.
I would put it on hold until we can get the facts straight.
Okay. And I guess we wait for the variance to come in. It hasn't come in, correct? It has come
For
in?
1001, it has. It will be heard. I sent out notices today, so it'll be April 3rd. I have not heard any variance request or anything like that for the River Park property. So, just the only one we've received is 1001 North Split Rock.
So do we want to see a contract or a copy of the lease? What do we want from the person with the variance? So we don't chase him back in here again. What do you want to see?
If they're gonna claim the hardship is that they can't put up a sign because of the existing sign, and that they can't take down the sign, I would need to see proof that they can.
So, beyond what's on our form is what we request from an applicant. They have the burden of proving their need. So, hopefully, they are cognizant of their burden of proof and what they need to bring.
Well, I think we need to advise them of that. They're not going to know it. I don't think that's fair to them. Yeah.
We can have a discussion with them before the next meeting.
With the understanding that staff can point out things, but we are not making their case for them. That is on them to do. We can make suggestions, but what they ultimately do is up to them.
Totally understand. Yeah. And if they have some issue with what we're requesting, then have them go to the commission directly. You don't have to take the brunt of that if there's something. And I'm not on the commission, just so you know.
yeah, they'll ultimately choose to submit what they want to submit, but hopefully if it involves signage, they would submit a lot of information about the signage situation.
All right, so we're going to have that on the agenda next time. All right, do we have anything else for the good of the cause? Hey, we got done a half an hour earlier this time. We're making a little progress. Okay? All right, if not, take a motion to adjourn, please.
Totes so moved.
Shoneman second.
All in favor?
Hi.
We are
Okay.
adjourned at 8:28 p.m.